Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Lasker 01 in a 15-minute game on leechess.org. And I'm going to wish him good luck. Well, actually, I could have pressed the button for that. What to do against d4 today? Let's just play d5. So I just had a relatively short game, and fortunately I got an immediate challenge from another player. This game is not with increment, but hopefully we'll still be able to have a good game. Let's see what Lasker does here. A lot of players play e3 in this position, just guarding the pawn on c4. But knight f3 is played. All right, so semi-Slav or Slav? I'm feeling Slavy today, so let's take on c4. My classical rating on Lichess has just crossed the magic 2200 threshold. I'm very pleased by that. Okay, a4. Yeah, played to stop black from playing b5. So I'm bringing the bishop out to f5. Remember in the Slav that black does not try to hang on to the pawn on c4. You're not taking on c4 on move 4 to try to hold the pawn. You're taking it to slow white down and establish a solid position in the meantime. Okay, here I'm going to play knight bd7. Black also very often just castles, but I'll play it this way. Queen e2 is common now, looking to play e4 coming up. Let me just hover over my opponent's name. I haven't seen this player before. All right, so classical is their best time control. They're a little under 2,000 in other time controls. Bishop d2. I don't think that move is great because I don't believe that the bishop is well placed on d2. Oftentimes they'll try to delay the development of that bishop so they can get it out to somewhere better like g5, which of course entails white pushing the e-pawn. I could play a5 here maybe, but I can also just castle, which I think I will do. This piece is undefended, and a5 would secure it, but if white plays something like queen b3, I can always play a5 then. Any knight move I'll be able to take on d2, so I'm not concerned. Okay, so now they play queen e2. Now, I can play a prophylactic move like bishop g6. I can maybe play queen e7, something along those lines. I could play c5. I'm pretty sure c5 is a good plan here as well. Trying to put my tempo to good use by attacking white's center. c5, d takes c5, knight takes c5. There's some appeal to that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. On anything else, I think white will have a free hand to play some desirable move next. I mean, black has a wide choice of good moves here, like bishop g6, queen e7, but c5 might be the way to challenge them. So let's do that. A normal pawn break in the Slav, challenging white's d4 pawn. I think d5 here would not be such a great idea in view of bishop takes c3. And then if d takes e6, I can take on d2, and I think black will come out ahead there. Yeah, white loses a piece in that transaction. So rook c1. Little bit of a vague move maybe, but it does prop up the defense on the c-file. I'm thinking rook c8 or maybe queen e7. I could take on d4 as well, but I think they're going to take with a knight should I do that. Although then I could play bishop g4. No, I'm going to play rook c8 first. Let's just defend that c-pawn a bit better and maybe menace c takes d4 with a discovery here at some stage. I probably should have recalculated and see what happens if d5 now. If d5, bishop takes c3, d takes e6, bishop takes d2, one thing that has changed is that they could take on d7 with tempo on my rook. So before I played rook c8, I probably should have looked at that. I'm sure this is still fine for me. Like if d5, I could play pawn takes d5, but since that entails a slight change of plan, I should have considered what happens if d5. Rook FD1 would be a normal move here. Okay, they're going to move their knight in and look at this D6 square, it seems. A reasonable plan, I would say. So if I take D2, which way will they recapture? Knight or queen? I'm almost certainly going to take D2, but I just want to know which way they're going to recapture. Probably with the queen, if I had to guess. Okay, yeah, let's play this capture. And if queen takes, I'm thinking maybe queen e7 or knight e4. Knight e4 is probably good, covering the d6 square with tempo. Yeah, queen takes d2, knight e4, queen moves somewhere, let's say back to e2, and then I can safely play a6 and kick the knight away. This is probably the way to go. Yeah, let's play this way. And I'm guessing e2 because white doesn't really want to play queen d3 or c2. That dives headfirst into possible discoveries. a5 is covered by my queen. e1 and d1 are back rank moves, not desirable. They would disconnect the rook coordination, so we can be pretty certain that Lasker will play queen e2. And then after a6, knight c3, I could trade. I could also play queen b6 here. Maybe that's a more combative way to treat the position. But I kind of like my queen on d8 for now because it guards the h4 square, so they can't play this to bug my bishop on f5. So a6, knight c3. Knight takes c3. That's nice and simple, though. There's a definite appeal in playing that way. They could take with a rook. But I still like my position. Yeah, let's just play a6. Time-wise, we're both doing fine. It's actually raining here in Minnesota, which is a little odd because just a week ago it was bone-chillingly cold, but now it's warm enough that it's raining. All right, knight c3. So to trade or just to leave it there? Queen b6 is again tempting. It doesn't threaten anything, but I don't want to see knight h4, though. I think I'd prefer to avoid that whole knight h4 idea. Yeah, let's just take. Probably rook takes will be played, and maybe then queen a5 and hit this pawn, which is newly undefended. Same thing if pawn takes. I think if b takes c3, queen a5 still makes a lot of sense going after a4. How's it going, Goez? Nice to see you in the spectator list. White does take with a rook. So queen a5 still. If queen a5, e4, probably bishop g4. Trying to take advantage of the tension. If queen a5, d takes c5, I'm thinking knight takes. b4 is not a threat. I could just take it with my queen. Okay. Boy, that match with Jan was helpful. I feel pretty sharp at the moment. I played the match about 3 hours ago now, and I'm feeling sharper than usual. Sharper than if I had just not played the match today and just played my usual single game, single 15-minute game. You can see that the tension between the pawns on c5 and d4 has been kept for a while. I haven't seen a really good reason to take on d4, which is why I haven't done it yet. Okay, so now white plays d5, just leaving the a4 pawn by the wayside, almost challenging me to take it. I could also take d5 first, but if I take d5, they take with a bishop, and they're on the b7 pawn. So that has to be kept in mind. So if queen takes a4, let's say d takes e6, bishop takes e6, bishop takes e6, f takes e6. I'm up a pawn there, that's true, but I have weaknesses, especially e6. I wonder if knight g5 is annoying then. It could be. But at the same time, the onus is kind of on white to prove that they have compensation at that stage. May not be too bad. Another thing I'm considering right now is trading on d5, taking on a4, and then after bishop takes, playing rook b8. But rook a3 could throw a spanner in things, attacking my queen at the end of that line. Not sure about that. I could play e5 here, close the position up a little bit. Might not be such a bad idea. Not sure my knight is such a great piece on this square, though, if I want to play that way. e5. If e4, maybe bishop g4. Sorry, my phone is buzzing. If e5, b3 is not possible because the rook would just hang. So that's not playable. So it's between e5 and taking on a4. You know what might be the other trouble taking on a4, though, is rook a3, queen b4, rook b3. That's irritating. Chasing my queen around. Rook fe8 is probably playable. But you know, I'm going to close the position down. Giving white a protected pass d-pawn, but that does block their bishop. If I were to take the pawn or let them take on e6, then they get to release the tension and possibly release the kraken in their light square bishop. So let's try to skirt that scenario. Lasker has a bit of a time edge. We're well into the middle game now, however. It is awkward for white to defend the a4 pawn. I haven't taken it yet, but I'm curious what they'll do about that pawn because, again, b3 is not possible due to queen takes c3. c2, trying to cover from that square, is not possible because of the bishop. If e4 with tempo on my bishop, I think I'll play bishop g4 and look to trade if really pressed with h3. If I could create a scenario where my knight is blockading from d6, that would be the best thing of all. It's probably not going to happen, and d7 is not a terrible square, but it's worth pointing out that the knight would be especially well placed on that d6 square. Okay, so bishop g6 probably the move here. I could play bishop e4, but I'm worried about stuff like queen g4 at some stage. Probably not now. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with bishop g6, so let's just pull this piece back. I'll pre-move this trade. I don't actually think white will take. Although, if they want to play the queen to c2 to defend the pawn, they might do that. Knight takes g6, h takes g6, queen c2, but then I can look to play b5 maybe, and after a takes b5, a takes b5, this bishop would have to retreat. As it stands, white's queen on e2 stops the pawn push b5. If white plays rook a1 to defend the pawn, I could also play b5. That's nice. You know what I maybe should have thought about? By taking with the h-pawn, if white ever plays e4, they could try to swing their queen over and attack me down the h-file. So I need to be careful about that. That would be a brute force way for white to proceed, but It's dangerous. Yeah, white's going to do it. Interesting. So their contention here is that the a-pawn doesn't matter, whereas the potential attack against my king does matter. All right. So maybe knight f6. I could take a4 once again, but I really feel like white's just giving me that pawn at this point. And maybe I shouldn't even bother taking it for now. It takes a while for white to get resources over to the king side, though. I mean, they need to put their rook on h3 and their queen on h4. And the queen can't reach h4 in one move. So it's going to take them a minimum 3 moves to set this up. And in the meantime, I can create threats. So let's bring the knight over here. If f4, I'm thinking like rook f e8 or maybe rook c e8. And if they take, I take with a rook and I'm on e4. So that's not a walk in the park for white either. We won't play their game with queen takes a4 quite yet. I think if queen takes a4, they're just going to ignore it or maybe play b3. But I might take that pawn still and then go b5 or something. We'll see. f4, aggressive. Okay, so which rook to play to e8? I want to play a rook to e8, but which one to do it with? The f rook, the benefit is that I get my f8 square free, and I can maybe run. The c rook, is the benefit is that I keep f7 well defended, which might be more important here. I mean, my c pawn doesn't matter too much. I think if I ever have to run with my king f8, I'm in bad shape anyways. So the way I look at it here, I might want to play rook ce8. They could advance f5, however. That could be annoying. And then try to squeeze me. I could play g5 and try to keep things closed, but can I really do that for that long? Maybe not. Maybe I should play rook fe8 if I ever want to bail, because rook fe8 I think is better suited against f5 in particular. So that might be the difference between these two moves. Five minutes remaining. Could also think about queen to c7, but that's like a complete change of plans. Rook fe8, f5, g5. Tough to say. Yeah, I'm gonna play this move. f5, g5, and maybe bail with my king if I can. Tony Rowe is watching. Tony and I have talked about doing some dual commentary 15-minute games, or standard games, not necessarily even 15-minute. So look for that in the coming weeks. We'll set it up. I might have been tempting fate with this whole bishop g6, h takes g6 thing. It just didn't click for me that white's rook on the third rank could be relevant. It should have, but it didn't sink in that might be the case. I think a key line here is what happens in the event of f5, g5, rook g3. I was thinking g4 there, but there's no doubt in my mind white would strongly consider sacking the exchange. Rook takes g4. Because then knight takes g4, queen takes g4. f6 is staring me in the face. I'm probably just losing there. My rooks are useless. So I think on f5, g5, rook g3, my best bet would be queen takes a4. Yeah, probably queen takes a4. Okay, I'm going to keep the position closed. I thought for a second about taking, but I think it's really misplaced. I don't want this rook becoming active down the file. No way. So rook g3, queen takes a4, rook takes g5, and then b5. Just start attacking. Maybe I can get my queen over to d4 with check. Perhaps. I have chances there. My king's still in danger, but I'm not getting mated. White's not going to hurt me with just the rook alone. They need more threats, more firepower on the king side. I wish I could teleport my king to d6. Pretty much any piece is good on d6 in this position, except the queen. I wouldn't want to send my queen there, but any other piece I would love to have on that square, just so white doesn't play d5 and open their bishop at some really annoying stage for me. Rook f3, more firepower. More pieces in the equation. What's the point, though? Can't I just take a4? Are you going to go rook a3? But then I can bring the queen back to d7 and play for b5. Okay, I'm going to call this potential bluff. Show me what you got, Lasker. I mean, rook h3 no longer packs a punch because there's no support for the rook. Once again, white's trying to attack with a single rook. So let's see what they got. b5 is the move I'd like to play. Maybe king f8 as well, just for pure defense. You know, in recent videos, I've talked about critical positions, like how to recognize a critical position, and I think the position we had a couple moves ago, like right on move 2021, good example of a critical position right there. Okay, so if I play b5, rook takes g5, takes c4, rook over to g3, I don't think they mate me that way. I would seriously doubt it. Yeah, so let's, again, try to call their bluff, potential bluff. If they do mate me, that's impressive. But I think with my knight on f6 and having free range with my king, the only thing that could really bug me is a timely d6, but they got to figure out what to do with their bishop now, and that's not a simple matter. If they move the bishop, I think queen d4 check, and I'm taking e4 next move. It's probably resignable for white. So they might have to just go all in and sacrifice the bishop. Rook takes g5, b takes c4, rook c to g3, and roll the dice. Yeah, like I think this move is just too passive. We'll find out, but that's my initial assessment. Maybe I'm not giving their position enough credit, but we'll see. Okay, checking on c1. Does that work? Or checking on a1, rather. They can't block with a rook, which is nice. They have to play king f2 in that case. But there's no dagger there. Just a mere annoyance. So queen d4 check is my main move. King h1. Then what? c4. Bishop to, let's say, b1. b4. Rook over. c3, just continuing to push. Yeah, let's do that. I think they're going to have their hands full with these pawns marching forward. And I want my queen centralized where it can help attack e4 and also disturb the king. Looks at the d1 square, looks at b2 potentially. So I'm just going to try to make a bunch of tempo moves here in a row. And hopefully get my rook working down the file. I think white's got to play king h1. I wouldn't spend too much time on this move if I were white. Virtually forced. So king h1, c4, and then it kind of depends where they put the bishop. I suspect b1 is the better square. Wow, they're going to play king f1. Looks really risky. Keeping the king in the center like that. Okay, well, let's continue with the tempo move. I like my pawns advancing on light squares, attacking their light square bishop. I just don't see the reasoning behind king f1 compared to king h1. Maybe they figure that there'll be more severe back rank threats with the king over here, but I think almost certainly the king is more exposed on f1. Now white just has to make a choice. Which square? They go to b1. Okay. So now b4. You know, one other nice thing is if rook f3 here, I could play g4, and that blocks white's queen because the rook on f3 is actually hindering their queen from reaching that square. Okay, so they bring the rook back that way. Might be best. And then at least they can play rook d1 in the future. That's a good move. Very good move by Lasker. I think still c3 is a good plan. Yeah, let's keep pressing. I'm thinking here if rook d1, I can actually play c2. And, okay, so they're going to do that. Let's do this. Get this rook involved. Not worrying about my a6 pawn. If white's going to take time out of their schedule to go win that pawn, I think their king is going to be lacking defenders. Here, maybe rook d1 is the best move, but he takes. Okay. Yes, if he takes g5, I just feel like white's pieces are too scattered. He does take g5. If I could check from c1, that would be a fork. But unlikely at the moment. Rook b8, probably the most obvious move. c2. Nah, c2, bishop takes, queen a1 check. Not convincing. Let's go to b8. Just win the tempo. Attack their bishop. I'm thinking rook into b2 next move. Possibly some other move, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. So we're actually even material here. 5 pawns versus 5 pawns. It doesn't seem like it, but that's in fact the case. I have knight takes d5 coming. Maybe that's my move. So if bishop c2, knight takes d5, pawn takes, I have queen f4 check. That just dawned on me. Aha. Ooh, that's a nice one because then we get in knight e3 check as well. So bishop c2, knight takes d5. If rook takes g7, king takes. Okay, so they're going to do this. Seems weird to offer a queen trade like that. Maybe just rook b2. Yeah, rook b2 threatening mate. Looks good. So queen f2 mate is the threat. If they take here, I get to take here with check and then pick up the queen next move. Yeah, they just got mated on f2. All right, so tell them GG. Yeah, so this was an interesting one. I'd say right around move 20 in particular. Things were heating up right here, and for a moment I was concerned that white would be able to hurt me down the h-file. That was my big concern with rook h3, queen g4, queen h4. Opponents being very nice. So that's what I'll be looking at when we add in the engine to take an objective look at this game. I also do wonder if c5 was the correct decision right here, because I was kind of criticizing white's bishop d2 choice. Maybe a little bit later, another question I have is whether after d5 I should push e5. I have a feeling the computer's going to say that's a mistake here on move 17. So let's check. So this was a Slav, mainline Slav, d takes c4. Again, black is not taking this pawn with the hopes of hanging onto it. They're taking it in the hopes of inconveniencing white for a few moves. Notice how white has to play a4 if they want to stop black from playing b5 and support the pawn. Sometimes you see white trying to do without the a4 move, like e4 and e3 are possible here. But mostly a4 is played. And this is all theory. Black is more likely to put the bishop on b4 in the Slav compared to, like a QGD or a semi-Slav, because the white pawn has already been committed to a4, and white can't bother black with a3. So that's why. So castles, Knight bd7, bishop d2. Yeah, so most of the time I see white playing queen e2 at this stage and looking to advance e4. There's a great deal of theory centered around that queen move. So bishop d2, castles, queen e2. And now I went for c5. The computer thinks that a5 is also good. As I was saying during the game, I feel like there's many possible courses for black. Queen e7 is always nice here. I think the queen belongs on e7 more so than c7 in the Slav because the c file is half open for white. Whereas on e7, this queen is nicely tucked away, and you're not going to be subject to harassment down the e file. Also, it can support e5. Could support e5 from c7 as well, but c5 looks okay. So striking at the center, rook c1. Here I played rook c8. Yeah, these moves all seem fine. I got to admit, though, I underestimated knight b5. I mean, I don't even know if I looked at this move. I don't think so. It was in my subconscious that knight b5 could be played, but I didn't connect it to the potential weakness of the d6 square and attacking the rook and the bishop. So I am glad that this move didn't hurt me too much. Take, and here maybe white should take with the knight in view of the knight e4 move that came with an attack on the queen. Taking with the knight might be a little better, although the computer doesn't seem impressed. Take, let's say white takes back with the pawn, knight b6, opening up an attack here. Knight takes a7, rook a8, knight back. Take here, black regains the material with a small edge, according to the computer. So white took with the queen, and now I get to play knight e4 with tempo and also cover the d6 square. That's nice. Yeah, a6. And here I took on c3. The engine is considering bringing the knight back to d6, so retreating the knight, but c3 seems fine. And it likes black a little bit here. Queen a5, maybe not so good. Bishop g4 is the more promising move. Bishop g4 is very interesting at this stage because if you play bishop g4 here, you're playing against white's plan to advance e4. Now, if they were to do it, they would just lose the pawn on d4 due to the pin. This would be catastrophic for white. So yeah, bishop g4 could be well-timed right here, as opposed to queen a5, which looked active, but as you saw in the game, I didn't leap at the opportunity to take the a-pawn. So yeah, I could see why bishop g4 is better, just holding off. What if bishop g4 and now d5? Something very bad. Take on f3, queen takes. Very bad for white, that is. Knight e5, followed by taking here and then taking the d5 pawn. Oh, and I see also another issue. If white takes with the g-pawn, I can take here, because if bishop takes d5, there's queen g5 check, exploiting the fork on the king and the bishop. Trouble. So that looks like a clear improvement. Bishop g4 over queen a5, which is not bad, but I think after d5, white is out of the woods, and white correctly judged that a4 is not a problem. And the engine does not like e5. Does not approve of that move. Okay, so that was one of the moves I was wondering about. So it says the best thing to do is just take and play rook c7 and guard the b-pawn, with maybe an edge for white even still with knight h4. Knight h4 is bothersome. Yeah, you can't bring the bishop here anymore. What about this other line I was thinking of, which was... Okay, I'm going to click out of these. Sorry to those challenging, but I'm analyzing right now. So the other thing I was thinking about was queen takes a4. But yeah, this is one reason I rejected it. Yeah, this is the reason why I didn't like this, because they could go rook a3 followed by rook b3 and attack my queen. And then win the b7 pawn after all is said and done. White has material equality and probably a better position too. They're on the offensive. A lot of critical moments revolve around pawn play and pawn breaks. And here you have an example of that after d5. Big crossroads. I tried to close the position, but in view of my troubles after white played that e4 move, not sure this is the right call. Maybe here I should consider playing bishop e4. I mentioned this move in the game. I was leery to put two pieces on an undefended square, but if queen g4, I can always play queen knight f6, attacking the queen and defending the bishop. The beauty of bishop e4 in this case would be that if f3 is played, now I drop back, and the third rank has been clogged up. It's not as easy for white to reach that side of the board with their rook, for instance. Yeah, if I realized that the third rank was a potential issue, I might have done that. But I did this, and I think he correctly played e4, and up till this point, Lasker has been doing pretty well. He had that maybe minor hiccup in the opening with bishop d2, but I think black's just defending here, and perhaps not so successfully. It looks like the initiative is firmly in white's hands. So I played knight f6 just to include my knight in the defense on the king side. Don't think I have time to take that pawn on a4 yet, so I'm just always reacting. Here I was debating which rook to bring to the e8 square, be it rook fe8 or rook ce8. Eventually I went with rook fe8. I had some reservations about that because I do weaken f7, and I kept talking about this d6 move that was never played. I thought that might open white's bishop and give me some issues on the f7 square. But it looks to be the right call because the ability to play king f8, if I need to, that's like my bug out move. Go to the fallout shelter of the center and maybe even to the queenside if I'm lucky. That's a possibility that's opened up by playing rook fe8 instead of rook ce8, wherein I'd be fully committed to keeping my king on the king side. But that said, doesn't the computer like rook ce8 better? It says they're both good for white. Yeah, now it's changed its mind, and it likes rook ce8 a little bit better. Well, we'll see. If there was something really good for white coming up, then maybe I'll have to amend my decision here to play rook fe8. So f5, and I think I got to keep it closed. If I take here and white joins in with the rook, this looks like it could be desperate for me pretty soon. That eval's jumping up quick, and yeah, I don't want that white rook participating as well. I don't have enough pieces in the vicinity of my own king. I need to keep lines closed. So no pawn exchange. Okay, so here, this might be a subtle position. Like the move the computer is saying is best is not an easy move for a human to play. So the engine wants to play rook b3, attacking this pawn. And then just scrolling through the line, rook b8, and now rook a3 defending the pawn. So white kind of stutter steps, and maybe the a-pawn is important in this line. It says there's a big advantage for white, but I would expect a lot of players to play like Lasker did. He just kind of went for it on the king side, and he's been offering this a4 pawn for so many moves. It's hard to just completely change your mind and suddenly not want to give the pawn anymore. I'm just going to tell Lasker that I recorded it. All right, so rook f3 was played. Yeah, what about rook g3? That was another move I was wondering about, if white just takes the brute force approach. So I was going to take here. The rook could come back over to a3. But let's just say he barrels ahead. b5. This is always the issue. Like, white can win the g5 pawn, but what then? Because my knight does a good job of controlling the g4 and the h5 squares. So how does white get enough firepower here to trouble me or checkmate me? This looks like similar to what happened in the game, where I'm able to activate my position, start pushing pawns. Yeah, c3, my pieces are trickling in. Once I get rook takes in, now I have something to contest the third rank. Black's better here. I'm surviving and thriving. So, key moment. Yeah, key moment after f5, g5. White needs something precise, and it might be like what the computer's suggesting. Rook b3, rook a3, holding onto the pawn, playing the position a little slower. It's tough. We're both getting low on time, and the computer's suggesting something pretty subtle. So queen takes a4. Yep, and now rook g3, and already after b5, black is much, much better. Okay, so here I went queen d4. The engine wants to go queen a1. Why is that good after king f2? c4 now. So there's no b1 for the bishop to go to, and if here I assume, okay, just grab the pawn. Now we've got 3 connected pass pawns, and as long as we don't get checkmated, we're going to win. Then it doesn't look like we'll get checkmated. Yeah, b4, b3 coming quite quickly. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward line, checking on a1. I did queen d4 check. This move just felt right. It's kind of a human move once again. And I really thought white has to go to the corner here. Seems like the engine agrees. King h1. It's still great for black after c4, but with the king in the center, white's always exposed to checks. So I don't think they can rightly play on with king f1. Again, difficult decision. Well, maybe not a difficult decision, but difficult position in general. So king f1 was played. I get c4 with tempo on the bishop. Bishop back here, and these pawns are rolling. For some reason, I only thought about rook c to f3. I don't think I even considered rook c1. This is also good for black. I probably would have played c3, I'm guessing. Take, rook takes. Looks similar to the game. Yeah, this is almost identical to the game, in fact. So white played rook c1. I played c3. Computer doesn't like that move. Gives it a mistake. So here I had this shot. This is a shot that I mentioned right at the end of the game. And it was possible here too. Very interesting. And the idea here is that if white takes, we get queen f4 check in, fork the king and the rook. Nice. But what if knight takes d5, rook d1? Trying to win a tempo on my queen. I can still play a knight move in. So knight f4 hitting the white queen. They move, and then I just back off my queen. All right, and then my queen can even come over on the 6th rank if necessary. Black is crushing here. Yeah, I wish I would have seen knight takes d5. That's why it gives c3 a mistake at this stage. So take, rook takes. We had this trade. Yeah, and now here I played rook b8, just gaining a tempo on the bishop. I think knight takes d5 is also playable right now. But had white played bishop to c2 here, I was going to fire away with this move. I think it works. And it's a similar reason to when white had a rook on c1. If white takes that knight, I get check in with the fork and pick up their rook. So, yeah, knight takes d5 would have ended things. I think after rook b8, white is busted. So he played queen d3, but now rook into b2, threatening mate, and that's over. Interestingly, here I could also play knight takes d5. Same reason. If pawn takes, queen f4. If they take here, I take on b1 with check. Intermediate move. And it's over. King moves, take the queen. If he takes here, you're just promoting a pawn rapidly. So as played, rook b2. Probably the only way to defend is this bishop c2 move, but there's many wins here. Probably simplest is just to take and play c2 and win white's bishop. All right, so some back and forth action. White gearing up for an offensive, and well played by Lasker, especially to realize that this plan of trading on g6 and then e4, introducing kingside ideas, was strong. I kind of feel for them because right around here, when the position got critical, they just have to find some tough continuation or maybe go back on their original plan and maybe just play to defend the a-pawn versus giving me the a-pawn, which eventually led to me being able to put my queen in a dominating position on d4. It was too little too late. So I think my biggest mistake was probably when I played e5. I think that was, where was that? Much earlier. So move 17. Maybe I got to realize that my position is not better here and just do what the engine's saying, take, and then play like a defensive move to guard b7. Also, I really wish I would have played bishop g4 instead of queen a5. A more subtle repositioning of the bishop, which holds up white's e-pawn. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this game. Thank you to Lasker01. You'll probably be watching this. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, Lasker. And you other viewers as well, feel free to post. I'm always looking forward to hearing your comments and reading your thoughts on the game. So I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later. Bye.